through his glorious death. And then we see how Indra is shocked at one instance. So there are various sections in this particular chapter. Vritrasura attacks Lord Indra, and then we see that the Lord Indra is encouraged by, he keeps on encouraged throughout this entire chapter, Vritrasura. And then he gives a philosophy in terms of, he starts preaching about devotional service, how everyone dances to the desire of the Lord. All of us dances to the desire of the Lord. And then after his entire philosophy and preaching on devotional service, Indra replies to Vritrasura. And then Vritrasura swallows Indra. That's where Vritrasura thinks that he has killed Indra. And then, but Indra comes out in victory. And we'll see how he comes out in victory. I'm sure all of us knows this because we have heard this multiple times. And then finally, the demigods praise the victory of Indra, and we will try to see whom they really praise, who is the real praiseworthy in this particular chapter. Okay, can anyone please read the chapter summary for me?
Hare Krishna. When Vritrasura was finished praying to the Lord, he threw his powerful trident at Indra. He used his thunderbolt to simultaneously cut the trident to pieces and sever the right arm of Vritrasura. With his left hand, Vritrasura delivered a powerful blow to both Indra and his mount, which knocked the empowered thunderbolt from Indra's hand. Ashamed of dropping the weapon, Indra did not want to pick up and consider himself defeated. Vritrasura, however, began instructing that outcome of the battle is the control of Sri Vishnu, the cause of all causes. Thus, eradicating Indra's foolishness, Vritrasura encouraged Indra to pick up his weapon and continue fighting.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Right, there is another summary as well, the rest of the summary. Can anyone please read this?
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji, go ahead. Go on.
Hare Krishna. King Indra appreciated the instructions on bhakti and recognized Vritrasura as a perfect devotee situated in pure goodness. Then with both warriors ready to fight, Vritrasura hurled his iron mace at Indra, who, as before, simultaneously cut apart both the weapon and arm of Vritrasura. Now armless, Vritrasura opened his mouth, gaping mouth, and with his snake-like tongue grabbed up Indra and swallowed him and his carrier, which caused much anxiety to the demigods who were onlookers of the event. Indra, however, was protected by Narayana Kavacha, and he burst out of Vritrasura's abdomen and hurled the thunderbolt at the demon's head. It took an entire year for the thunderbolt to completely sever the head of Vritrasura. And when it was done, everyone witnessed the soul of Vritrasura return back to Godhead.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Right, so then that's how he returns back to Godhead. We'll see how he returns back to Godhead. So this is the first words in this particular chapter where Vritrasura attacks Indra. Sukadev Goswami said, desiring to give up his body, Vritrasura considered death in the battle, preferably to victory. O King Parishit, he vigorously took up his trident and with great force attacked Lord Indra, the king of heaven, just as Kaitava had forcefully attacked the Supreme Personality of Godhead when the universe was inundated. Right? So let's spend I would like to recollect what we had, how Mataji very nicely explained last week. We just heard the prayers of Vritrasura. I hope you remember the last four verses in the previous chapter where the prayers of Vritrasura to the Supreme Lord, which has the Sambandha, Avideya, and also the Prayojana prayers to the Lord. And I was listening to one of the lectures by Damodar Prabhu, who termed as this is also called as the second Chatushloki Bhagavatam by some of our Acharyas. Well, he has not given any reference, but he also did mention that maybe not from our Gaudiya Sampradaya, things that way, but yes, this is also, the prayers are also called as sort of a second Chatushloki Bhagavatam. So we saw last week how Indra is materially calculative. He was literally calculative. Why I'm saying materially calculative? Because he was scared, because he was not sure if Vritrasura, what is he going to do if he throws the thunderbolt at him? In case Indra throws a thunderbolt at him, what is he going to do? He was very scared. We all know that how he went to Lord Vishnu, and Vishnu requested him with the bones of Dadichi Muni. A thunderbolt was created by Vishwakarma, and we are also aware that what was the reason behind Vritrasura, how he they performed the yajna and how he was out of the yajna, and what was his karma, what he is supposed to do. His rightful duty is just to what we call fight with Indra and kill him. That was the main purpose, right? So, however, Vritrasura is ready. Here we see that Vritrasura is already aware or the reasons of his particular birth, and he is ready for the final exam as well. Why we call it as a final exam? Because we know that he's already aware that he's nearing death, and he knows for sure that he would want to die. And in his previous janma, in his previous life, we will get to know that in the following chapters what he was. But he's aware, and he's already a devotee where he knows he's very eager to die, because he has prayed to the Supreme Lord, and he's very eager to die, and he wants to go back to Godhead. We saw in the 4 prayers how he said, "O aham haretave padai kamula dasanudasa," right? He wants to become, he just prays to the Lord, "Give me shelter of your lotus feet, so that I can again become the servant of your dasanudasa," right? Earlier he was a Chitraketu Maharaj, which we already know in his previous birth, and he was serving Shankarshana, Lord Shankarshana. So again, he's now requesting as to when will he become the servant of the Lord. And he realized that he has done a mistake by being the direct servant of the Lord, and now he wants to be the Dasanudasa, right? That's where he says, Dasanudasa bhavitasmi bhuyaha, right? So what does this make us understand? This makes us understand that it's always better to be a servant, being a servant of the Lord. So being a servant of the Lord is much more exalted position than being the direct servant of the Lord. So in that desperation, he would want to leave the body, right? And Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakura also says that the Lord, while reciting these prayers, Lord appears in his heart and says, "I'm very pleased and ready to give you anything. Vritrasura, please ask me, what do you want?" So then Vritrasura goes on with the next prayer where he says, Nanaka Prashtham, right? He doesn't want the heavenly planets, nor the place where Brahma resides as well. He doesn't want the lower planets either, nor he would want to do any yoga siddhis or any mystic powers. He doesn't want anything else. And what does he want? He just doesn't want anything. He's just eager to see him again and reunite with him. That's what he says. Then it's very beautiful. It goes on to the next verse while Mataji was explaining, Ajata Paksha Iva Mataram Khaga, right? Like the baby birds who are waiting with their grown wings for the mother to come and feed. He just wants to go back. There were 3 examples that were given. That was the Prayojana Tattva, which we were talking about. His very eagerness and helplessness, right? There were 3 analogies given. That was a beautiful verse. One after the other, it was given in the same verse where Ajata Pakshi was given. And the third one was much beautiful because it says he would want to, the last analogy where he's desperate and he wants to meet the Lord. He doesn't want anything. In the second analogy, we remember the calf is waiting for the mother so that the calf can drink the milk of the mother cow in expectations. But the last one, Ravindraksha, Rikshatvam, right? He doesn't want anything. He just wants his mind to see the Lord and he wants to serve the Lord. That's what he says. Because he is scared that he's going into the samsara chakra. He's going into the circle of life and death again and again. So that's where, that was a little background what we just saw. So here in this particular verse, now he is more enthusiastic to fight, so that he just wants to fight and get defeated. And in the purport, Srila Prabhupada clearly mentions that King, well, there is no purport for this, but there is a purport for this, but however, what we can understand from this is King Indra was morose and reluctant, despite all encouragement by Vritrasura. And Vritrasura was not at all interested in the victory, but what was he trying to do? He was just trying to fight, because that was the purpose behind his birth. His only birth was to fight. So that's where he was repeatedly asking or encouraging Indra to kill him with the thunderbolt. And Srila Prabhupada mentions in the purport a reference about Tvaktva Deham Punarjanma Naitimam Etiso Arjuna. He says, after giving up this body, a devotee immediately returns to Lord Krishna and never returns to accept another body. And this was the real interest of Vritrasura. Yes, can anyone please read verse number 2?
Hare Krishna. Vritrasura throws his trident. Then Vritrasura, the great hero of the demons, whirled his trident, which had points like the flames of the blazing fire at the end of the millennium. With great force and anger, he threw it at Indra, roaring and exclaiming loudly, "O sinful one, thus shall I kill you." Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Yes, so with great anger and force, he threw the trident at Indra, remembering that he has killed his brother and a great Brahmana, right? We are all aware, we just learned also that he has killed a great Brahmana Vishwarupa, apart from getting defeated as well. So with great anger, he tries to, and with force, he tries to throw the trident. Moving on to the next verse, Indra cuts off Vritrasura's arm. Flying in the sky, Vritrasura's trident resembled a brilliant meteor. Although the blazing weapon was difficult to look upon, King Indra, unafraid, cut it to pieces with his thunderbolt. Simultaneously, he cut off one of Vritrasura's arm, which was as thick as the body of Vasuki, the king of the serpents. Right? So here, now what happened now, as and when he throws a trident, Indra, what he uses his blazing weapon. He was unafraid, and he uses his thunderbolt and he cuts into pieces. At the same time, he also he cuts off his hand, and his right hand, where it is clearly mentioned that it was as thick as the body of Vasuki. He just cuts off his hand over here, right, and cuts off his Vasuki, right? Verse number 4, can anyone please read this for me?
Hare Krishna. Vritrasura strikes Indra. Although one of his arms was severed from his body, Vritrasura angrily approached King Indra and struck him on the jaw with an iron mace. He also struck the elephant that carried Indra. Thus, Indra dropped the thunderbolt from his hand.
Yes, so thank you so much, Mataji. Hare Krishna. So even though his arm was cut off, Vritrasura angrily approached King Indra and struck him on the jaw. He came very close, and also he struck the elephant. So moving on to the verse 5 and 6, can anyone please read both these verses?
The denizens of various planets praised. The denizens of various planets like the demigods, Shaman, Charanas, and Siddhas praised Vritrasura's deed. But when they observed that Indra was in great danger, they lamented, "Alas, alas." Vritrasura encourages Indra. Having dropped the thunderbolt from his hand in the presence of his enemy, Indra was practically defeated and was very much ashamed. He dared not pick up his weapons again. Vritrasura, however, encouraged him, saying, "Take up your thunderbolt and kill your enemy. This is not the time to lament your fate."
Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Yes, so we see here that first they appreciated Vritrasura, right? All the denizens, they appreciated Vritrasura. And finally, when they noticed that he fell, then they lamented, saying, "Alas, alas." right? Now, this particular verse, Vritrasura encourages Indra. So this is a very amazing verse. Why it's amazing? Because actually, the first of all, the thunderbolt just fell in front of Vritrasura. From this verse, we understand that the thunderbolt just fell in front of Vritrasura. The word, there are particular words that are stated in this particular verse, which is the second line, which says Ari Sannidho, right? Ari Sannidho. The word stated Ari Sannidho means it fell near the feet of the enemy. It's like a great shame. So he was feeling ashamed. Who was feeling ashamed here? The Indra was feeling ashamed, as if the weapon touching Vritrasura's feet. He got his hand cut off. We all know that he got his hand cut off, bleeding completely. And he gave one tight slap to Indra and also to his elephant. Still, he says, you just got a slap from me. Why are you so morose that your Vajra fell off? Come on, get up and fight. He's just saying, why are you being ashamed? Just get up and fight. So here, our acharyas, when I was listening to this particular chapter while preparing a presentation, our acharyas try to find out as to what we can understand from here. So we can understand the level of self-confidence. For example, in Krishna consciousness, even if a devotee goes through extreme reverses, a devotee never loses his confidence on the Lord. We have seen that many examples so far in the previous chapters and in our cantos as well. However, the flip side, on the other side, what we see, when we see if there is even a small reverse in someone's life, right, a non-devotee's life or anybody's life, they get so morose and dejected with their life, right? Here, does it mean that Indra was not a devotee? Yes, he was a devotee, but he was not in complete or pure consciousness, right? He never gets morose and goes on with his duty or his service, but a devotee just goes on with his service. So here we can understand that Vritrasura's prime duty of his birth was just to fight and never give up the fighting spirit, even if he loses both the arms, right? But while we look at Indra, he was just a pure devotee. But as and when he sees a small obstacle, he just stops and he becomes morose. And here we see that Vritrasura keeps uplifting his spirit, asking him to get up and fight, get up and fight. So that's the sharp contrast between these two. So here we see Vritrasura is a demoniac in nature. He wants to get defeated and he wants to get rid of the demoniac body. He just wants to get rid of the demoniac body because he thinks that that particular demoniac body is not very much conducive for him to just what he call take care of his devotional service. And he knows that he's going to die because there is already a Vajra that is being created. So what we understand, our Acharya state that similarly, they state that our material body is equally an obstacle to achieve Krishna. So we should always be eager to serve with our own senses than to serve the Lord, right? We are always dying to serve our own senses than to serve the Lord. So we should go beyond, right? We should go beyond and control our senses and fight for them and detach however we are materially attached to our consciousness. And then we should understand that Lord has a plan. Lord has a plan for everyone and take up the fighting spirit. Also, if we remember, Srila Prabhupada quoted in this reference that when our body becomes old, we cannot serve the way we can serve Lord, or we cannot do any devotional service because our body becomes really useless. However, we are not ready to accept this and we just want to defeat and win like Indra in the name of Krishna consciousness. And we are every time trying to protect our attachments. So this is one of the very important verses in this particular chapter for us to understand. Moving forward, can anyone please read the verse?
Hare
The text
Krishna.
here.
Verse 7. Lord Indra is encouraged by Vritrasura, continuous victory against enemies. Vritrasura continued, O Indra, no one is guaranteed of being always victorious, but the original enjoyer, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Bhagavan. He is the cause of creation, maintenance, and annihilation, and he knows everything. being dependent and being obliged to accept material bodies. Belligerent subordinates are sometimes victorious and sometimes defeated. When you want me to read further?
Yes, Mataji, you can go ahead and read.
When two parties fight, the fighting actually goes on under the direction of Paramatma. Victory or defeat is not actually theirs. It is an arrangement by the Lord through the agency of material nature. Pride in victory or moroseness in defeat is useless. One should fully depend on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is responsible for the victory and defeat of all living entities.
Thank you so much,
Prabhupada's
Mataji.
narration.
Thank you so much. Yes, so this is also one of the beautiful verses because here we learn many things, right? In the purport, Srila Prabhupada, what you call clearly emphasizes that most of the times we want to achieve success. Almost all the times we just want to achieve success. We are not ready to accept our defeat, right? Here also Srila Prabhupada beautifully points out in the purport, right? We act lordly. Most of the times we act lordly. He gives a reference in this particular translation, in this particular what you call the words. He gives a reference of the Bhagavad Gita shloka. Prakriti kriyam anani gunai karmani sarvashaha ahankara vibhuratma kartaham miti manyate. Right? It says the bewildered spirit soul, under the influence of the three modes of the material nature, thinks himself the doer of activities that are in actuality carried out by the nature, right? And he goes on, he continues by saying the living entities work only under the direction of the Supreme Lord. The Lord gives orders to the material nature and she arranges facilities for the living entities. The living entities are not independent, although they foolishly think themselves the doers. That is the karta, kartaham iti maniti. Now, in the second paragraph also is very nicely mentioned, victory is always with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, right? As far as the subordinate living entities, the fight under the arrangement of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, victory or defeat is not actually theirs. It is an arrangement by the Lord. That's what we just read. Mataji just read it. By the agency of the Lord itself. The living entity is ordered to act according to his position, and that is how it works. He has given various references. Niyatam kuru karma tvam karma jayo hi akarmana. Perform your prescribed duty, for action is better than inactions. That's what he's mentioned over here. So basically, this is as good as like giving the karma kanda section or the karma yoga section, where Vritrasura is trying to give explanation to Lord Indra over here. He's giving. And one of the questions in the preliminary questions which we have for preparation questions is about the Srila Prabhupada's mood we can understand here. Yes, if anyone wants to read this, the dutiful mood of our devotees, how it should be.
Srila Prabhupada's mood, dutiful mood of devotees. One must act sincerely according to his position. Victory or defeat depends on the Lord. This verse is very instructive for sincere workers in the Krishna consciousness movement. We should not be jubilant in victory or morose in defeat. We should make a sincere effort to implement the will of Krishna or Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and we should not be concerned with victory and defeat. Our only duty is to work sincerely so that our activities may be recognized by Krishna.
Thank you so much, Mataji. Exactly, right? If we remember, he just says it's when we are dependent on the Supreme Lord, most of the times works. Maybe we can have a discussion as to when do you think we can always be victorious? Here it says, in this particular verse, it says we cannot always think of being victorious. But there is again a side discussion as to when do you think we can always be victorious?
Hare Krishna.
Yes, Prabhuji, please go ahead.
Yeah, when we are totally, as this verse clearly says, when we are totally dependent on Krishna, only we will be victorious. Because he is the person who, who creates this one atmosphere or this one for defeat or victory, what we read here now. So that way, if we depend on Krishna, that is the one which will be, then only we will be victorious. Otherwise, it is not possible. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Yes.
Yeah, in Krishna
Yes,
consciousness,
someone also has some. Yes, please go ahead.
what is most important is your service. Like now, the best example is Jatayu. Even the lost is the battle, but he was the victorious. Actually.
Yes, thank you so much, Prabhuji. Yes, well, just for an example, if I remember, most of the times when we go for book distribution or whenever we are handling any project, it's not that always we are supposed to be victorious. At times we might be in a different mood, just like Indra's mood, Guru's mood, or we don't know what is going to happen if we are able to sell more number of books or how we're going to succeed. But if you see, we are always victorious. Why we are always victorious? As we are always dependent on the Lord and we are trying to serve the Lord. That's why, if we remember, many of the times Srila Prabhupada always used to say, chant Hare Krishna and always be happy. Just depend on Krishna. He always used to say that, chant Hare Krishna and always be happy. Just depend on Krishna no matter whatever it is. And that's the mood which Srila Prabhupada is trying to emphasize here. Right, moving on to the next verse. Yes, can anyone please read this verse and also can chant this verse for me, please?
Hare Krishna. Verse 8. Time controls all living entities. Lokaha sapala yashyame shvashvati vivasa vase dvija iva sicha baddhaha sakala iha karanam. All living entities in all the planets of this universe, including the presiding deities of all the planets, are fully under the control of the Lord. They work like birds caught in a net, who cannot move independently. Can continue, Prabhu?
Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Thank you so much. Right here, Vritrasura is explaining the dependency on the Lord, and also how we explaining the time factor, where someone willingly agrees to serve the Lord, right? All living beings in all the planets of this universe, including the presiding deities, are all under the control of the Lord, right? Here we can see a contrast between where Srila Prabhupada explained in this verse, in the purport, he explains this clearly as all of us are servants of the Supreme Lord only, but for devotees, it's very easy to understand and have the faith and serve the Lord. And for non-devotees, they cannot understand the supreme will of the Lord. Hence, want to lord over, thinking they are the doer of their activities. If we understand clearly, we are also serving Maya, because we are materially attached. We are also serving Maya, but at the same time, we are indirectly serving Krishna only. But this is not bhakti. But to willingly dependent on Krishna is bhakti, is being emphasized in this particular verse. Also in this verse, there are a few what we call words that are being used. Swashanti vivasaha, they are fully dependent. They live. All the sapalaha means the chief deities or the controllers are fully dependent on the Lord. That's what it's being mentioned here. And also it says sakala iha karanam. The time factor in this cause is very important, as we are controlled with the time factor, as we are helplessly dependent on the Lord, right? And there is a question also, how are the results of action determined? Because at times we think that it is just our karma. Is it just our karma which determines, or how are the results of action determines? It's just a discussion. Because if we see point number 3, it says victory and defeat come according to the results of one's karma, and the judgment is given by the Supreme Lord. Karmana Daivan Trena. Does anyone would want to answer or try? How are the results of the actions determined? Yes, one might, okay, so one might think that it is just because of our karma, we are this today or we are that today. To an extent, yes, it is true. But at the same time, it is Lord's plan, Lord utilizes his plan as to what kind of karma or what have we done the pious deeds, what time he has to inject those pious deeds and get us through. He is the one who decides accordingly. It is not, be it a pious deed or a bad deed. He's the one who decides. So if we think that it is just our karma, today we are good or today we are in a bad shape, it is not just the karma. The Lord has his plan as well. And most of the times, and every time, not most of the times, every time, the Supreme Lord is always victorious because everyone acts under his directions. Moving on to the next verse where it talks about time. Again, time controls everything. Our sensory powers, that is Ojha, mental power, Saha, bodily strength, Balam, living force, Pranam, immortality, Amritam, and mortality, Mrityum, are all subject to the superintendence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Not knowing this, foolish people think the dull material body to be the cause of their activities. So here, what do we understand? We clearly understand that the Kala factor or the power of the Supreme Lord is being emphasized. And one day, all these will be taken away. That's what we should understand. This is the point Vritrasura is emphasizing here. The controller of time is the Supreme Lord, who's the cause of all causes. Verse number 10. Can anyone please help me reading this? Or would like to read this?
Verse 10. All living beings are under the control of the Lord. Yatha darumayi nari yatha bhadramayo mrigaha evam bhutani madhavan ishatantram buddhi progo. O King Indra, as a wooden doll that looks like a woman, or as an animal made of grass and leaves, cannot move or dance independently, but depends fully on the person who handles it. All of us dance according to the desire of the Supreme Controller, the personality of Godhead. No one is independent.
Thank you so much, Mataji. Yes, again, this verse emphasizes how we are completely dependent on the Lord and we are not independent. Vritrasura is giving analogies here, right? What kind of analogies is he giving? Yatha darumayi nari means just as a woman is made up of wood, and yatha patramayo mrigaha, right? How an animal is made up of leaves, and they are being controlled by someone, right? Toys or they are being controlled by someone. This is being used many times by Srila Prabhupada in his lectures. Yatha darumayi nari and yatha patramayo mrigaha. Right? We are being controlled by someone or the other, and we are always controlled by the Supreme Personality, right? And we cannot act independently, but depend fully on the person who handles it. That's what it's mentioned here. Yatha patramayo mrigaha. Again, not on an external platform that we are becoming independent, while in this material body, we are always dependent on the Lord. That's what we understand from this particular verse. So here, Krishna gives a very beautiful, he gives two beautiful verses from Adi Leela and also from the Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchitananda Vigraha. He talks about that, Anadiradir Govinda Sarva Karana Karanam. He says, Krishna, who is known as Govinda, is the supreme controller. He has an eternal, blissful, spiritual body. He is the origin of all. He gives all the references, and we know there are many references in Bhagavad Gita also. Can anyone give one reference where a Lord says, I'm everything?
Aham Sarvasya Prabhu.
Yes, Aham Sarvasya Prabhu. Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Right here, he gives very powerful things. That's what he tries to mention here, that we are all servants of Krishna. We have no independence. We are dancing according to the desire of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But according to our ignorance and illusion, we think that we are dependent on the Supreme Will. So moving on to the 11th verse, which talks about without the Lord's mercy, nothing works out here. There are three Purushas, Karanodakshai Vishnu, Garbhodakshai Vishnu, and Kshirodakshai Vishnu. the material nature, the total material energy, the false ego, the 5 material elements, the material senses, the mind, intelligence, consciousness cannot create the material manifestation without the direction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this verse also clearly proves that even the Purusha avatars or Mahavishnu are also clearly dependent on the Lord, and how everyone is dependent on the Lord. Srila Prabhupada quotes in this verse the Bhagavad Gita. He talks about Maya Dhikshena Prakriti Suyate Sacharacharam, right? That this material nature is working under my direction, O son of Kunti, and it is producing all moving and unmoving living beings. Only under the direction of the Lord, the Supreme Person, can Prakriti, which is manifested in 24 elements, create the situations for the living entity. He also quotes Aham Adiri Devanam, right? He quotes this particular words as well, that I am the origin of all the demigods. Therefore, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the origin of everything, and no one is independent of him. And also there is a reference about the third point, which is there on the slide. Srila Madhvacharya also says, Anisha Jiva Rupena, the living entity is Anisha, means never the controller, but is always being controlled. Therefore, when a living entity becomes proud of being an independent Ishvara or God, that is his foolishness. Such foolishness is described in this particular following verse. Okay, there is a discussion here. I think we can move on with the discussion as well, because the next verse also talks about the same thing. The Mimamsakas say that the Jiva causes the creation by his own actions. What is required for Prakriti, manifested in 24 elements, to create different situations for the living entity? Is it the Prakriti which is creating everything, or is it any supreme power that does all these, is the question here. We just read that the Prakriti cannot do anything, neither the Purusha avatars cannot do anything. That's what we read here. Yes, moving on to verse number 12. Can anyone please read this?
Hare Krishna. Everyone answers to the desire of the Lord. Verse 12. Ignorant fools think themselves creators. A foolish, senseless person cannot understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Although always dependent, he falsely thinks himself the Supreme. If one thinks, according to one's previous fruitive actions, one's material body is created by the father and the mother, and the same body is annihilated by another agent, as another animal is devoured by a tiger. This is not proper understanding. The Supreme Personality of Godhead himself creates and devours the living beings through other living beings. Hare Krishna. Shall I read the other?
Yes, Prabhuji, you can read.
According to the conclusion of the philosophy known as Karma Mimamsa, one's karma or previous fruitive activity is the cause of everything, and therefore there is no need to work. Those who arrive at this conclusion are foolish. When a father creates a child, he does not do so independently. He is induced to do so by the Supreme Lord. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Yes, so this is exactly what we were talking in the previous verse also, like comparing or contrasting between a Vaishnava and a Karma Mimamsa. What does a Vaishnava do? As we all know, in the purport also it is mentioned, right? One cannot be induced to create anything. It's clearly mentioned. Therefore, the father and the mother are not the creators of the living entity. It is clearly mentioned here. According to the living entity's karma, fruitive activities, is put into the semen of the father, who injects the living entity into the womb of the mother. Then according to the body of the mother and the father, yatha yoni yatha bijam, the living entity accepts the body and takes birth to suffer or enjoy. Therefore, the Supreme Lord is the original cause of one's birth. One might think that I'm the father, and there is a seed-giving mother, and we are the ones who are responsible for it. For example, there are various examples. When I was listening to this lecture, the example was clearly given that a father and a mother, the parents take care of the son very well. They bring up the very well, the kids very well. But are we sure what is going to happen with the kid? Is it guaranteed? No, there is no guarantee at all. One of the basis point is it depends on the karma of the son, of the person who's born, and also the karma of the parents. And at the same time, it is also the Lord's plan, how he wants to tweak at this point of time. Right? Yes, we have a question, I guess, or a comment.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, so as per the discussion, everything happens by the will of the Lord for every minute thing. And so then in that case, someone can blame the Lord that I am not able to perform devotional service, I am doing sinful activities, that also because of the Lord.
Yes. That's exactly what the Karma Mimamsa philosophies is talking about. The like blaming the Lord or talking or giving the Lord, stating that this is my karma, why do I have to do any kind of activities or any kind of work at all?
No, Karma Mimamsa philosophy says that everything depends on the karma. So there is no role of the living entity. Everything is predestined, and whatever we have done accordingly, it is acting, right?
Correct.
So yeah, but what we are discussing here is everything is happening by the will of the Supreme Lord. So if somebody is performing sinful activities, can that also be attributed to the Supreme Lord? That is my question.
Well, it is not attributed to the Supreme Lord. It is the person who is doing the action at that point of time. He's doing it. He is doing it because of the sins which he has accrued over a period of time. He's not able to do it. He's not able to control himself. That's what he's trying to do. And the Lord facilitates him. Yes, you would like to do. As a Paramatma, he facilitates him as to this is what you would want to continue, you continue. For example, when we were seeing, when we were listening to last week's the 4 prayers, the Lord appeared and he asked, what do you want to do, Vritrasura? But Vritrasura never asked for anything. Maybe any other answers in this forum? Maybe you can help me answering to Gopakumar Prabhu's question as well. Is it that the Lord, he's accruing his sins or he's continuing to do his sins, and is it Lord's plan? Is that your question, right, Prabhuji?
Right, Prabhuji. Right.
Hare Krishna. I'll try.
Yes, Mataji.
According to Vaishnava philosophy, as we see in the Srimad Bhagavad Gita, the Paramatma is the Upadrashta Anumanta, and he is the witness and the sanctioner, according to the will and desire of the spirit soul, particular spirit soul. So, if the spirit soul wants to enjoy different fruits and wants to get the benefit out of it, or he wants to suffer the bitter fruits, that is because of the desire of the spirit soul. The Paramatma, he only sanctions the desire. However, when it comes to Bhakti Yoga, that same Paramatma who was neutral becomes very active and gives direction to the person who is trying to follow the instructions of the Lord. So in Karma Mimamsa philosophy, even though karma is considered as the goal or
main goal,
it's just work, and work is worship, and there is no role to the Supreme Lord, still that karma is only as we say, that karma goes on according to the desire of that particular living entity, but there is no role for the Lord. However, it has to be sanctioned, as we see in Vaishnava philosophy, it has to be sanctioned by the Lord Karma, Daiva Netre. So what the question is, Prabhuji is asking, that even though sinful activities are carried out by the particular spirit soul, the Lord only sanctions, but the desire and the activities are carried out by the spirit soul individually. And he is responsible for whatever reaction comes. So in that is what the Lord gives different scriptures and different saintly persons. They give whatever is required to follow, but the desire, however, depends on the individual soul.
On the individual soul. Thank you so much, Mataji. Yes, we have Ravilochan Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Correct. But also we have heard in many Prabhupada's classes only that whatever is happening in our life, it's only due to karma. That means automatically everything happens and it is only, it is just a flow. But what actually we have to do is to get into Krishna consciousness. Other than that, everything comes automatically according to our karma. Is it something like, also we have heard in many classes that for the normal people, it is the karma which it acts, and only for the devotee, the Krishna sometimes, he intervenes and he acts according to what he wants. Is it? I think, we should take it in that way. That's what I was thinking, probably. Hare Krishna.
Well, maybe, I'm not sure, but as per the what you call, while preparing this particular presentation, when I was listening to the lectures, I clearly remember Damodar Prabhu talking about where it is not only for devotees and non-devotees, it acts for everyone. The Lord takes care of this. One is based on the karma, as Prabhuji asked the question, raised the question, and the second one, how will he continue his sins? As Mataji explained, it is where sanctions, the Lord is sanctioning. And the Lord ensures that if there are any pious deeds or any bad deeds, which karma should come first, or how he should take care of it. Like, for example, why does bad things happen with good people, or how does it happen with? So there is a Lord's plan in everything. And as you rightly mentioned, once we understand the Lord's plan, once we get into Krishna consciousness and start acting it, then we can completely be dependent on the Lord. This is what being emphasized in this particular verse as well. But at times, the ignorant fools think that they themselves are the creators. So to just answer your question, no, it is for everyone. It's not just for devotees where Lord takes care. So moving on to the next verse. Yes, can anyone please recite this for me as well?
Ayu Shri Kirti Aishwaryam Ashisha Purushaya Ya Bhavanti Eva Hit Tatkale Yatha Ichor Viprayaya. Just as a person not inclined to die must nonetheless give up his longevity, opulence, fame, and everything else at the time of death, so at the appointed time of victory, one can gain all these when the Supreme Lord awards them by his mercy.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Yes, again, Vritrasura is encouraging Indra here with various philosophical points. Now is the time for your victory, right? Also, the supreme mercy of the Lord is being emphasized here in this verse, based on how one gains or loses everything material in one's life. Srila Prabhupada clearly states in the purport that no one is independent. Everyone is dependent on the mercy or chastisement of the Supreme Lord. So the conclusion is that even though we do not wish to be separated from our possessions, sometimes the Lord forcibly takes them from us, and sometimes he showers such benedictions upon us that we are unable to receive them all. Therefore, either in opulence or in distress, we are not independent. Everything is dependent on the sweet will of the Supreme Personality of the Lord. So moving on, verse number 14, therefore one should be equipoised, is what this verse talks about. Tashmada kirti yashashor jaya pajayor api samashyat sukha dukhabhyam mrityu jivitayos tatha. Since everything is dependent on the supreme will of the personality of Godhead, one should be equipoised in fame and defamation, victory and defeat, life and death. In their effects, represented as happiness and distress, one should maintain oneself in equilibrium without any anxiety. That's what is mentioned here. In how one can remain equipoised is being emphasized in this particular verse. Moving on, this is also one of the important verses here. The vision of liberated persons. Can anyone please recite this?
Hare Krishna. Verse number 15, vision of the liberated person. Sattvam rajastama iti prakrate natmano gunam Tatra Sakshinam Atmanam Yo Veda Sanabhadyate. Translation, Jai Shri Prabhupada. One who knows that the three qualities, goodness, passion, and ignorance, are not qualities of the soul, but the qualities of material nature, and who knows that the pure soul is simply an observer of the actions and reactions of these qualities, should be understood to be a liberated person. He is not bound by these qualities. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji. So here Dhritarashtra states that victory and defeat are just the products of gunas, the three modes of material nature alone. And as we all know, the soul is beyond the gunas, and one can discriminate this way. And by being one is equipoised and not bounded in this material world. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada quotes the most quoted verse of Bhagavad Gita. Can anyone guess? Yeah, it's there. Brahma Bhuta Prasannatma na sochati na kangshati mad bhaktim lavate param. Right? He quotes about that. Sama sarveshu bhuteshu mad bhaktim lavate param. So he says, when one attains self-realization, the Brahma Bhuta stage, one knows that whatever happens during his life is due to the contamination of the modes of material nature. The living being, the pure soul, has nothing to do with these modes. Also, he continues stating that the real qualification of the liberated soul is that he remains Krishna consciousness, undisturbed by the actions and reactions of the material energy. And such a liberated person is always jubilant, right? And he should not protest or accept anything in terms of his personal sense gratification. Rather, he should receive everything as a mercy of the Lord and remain steady in all circumstances, no matter whatever it is. That's the vision of a liberated soul. Moving on to verse number 16. Oh, my enemy, just look at me. I have already been defeated, for my weapon and arm have been cut to pieces. You have already overwhelmed me, but nonetheless, with a desire to kill you, I'm trying my best to fight. I'm not at all morose, even under such adverse conditions. Therefore, you should give up your moroseness and continue fighting. Right? We all know what has happened. He whirled his trident, and his trident was cut into pieces. And then he chopped his hands also. And still, Dhritarashtra is trying to give him philosophy about devotional service to Indra, and he's trying to wake him up. So the most important point here is one should perform his duty under all circumstances, even though one may know what the result will be. That is being emphasized here very wisely by Srila Prabhupada. Right? Again and again, he does that. He states, he's also stating here that Dhritarashtra was so great and powerful that in effect, he was acting as a spiritual master, right? He was acting as a spiritual master over here, right? No matter whatever our circumstances are, one should perform his duty. One of the side quote, if you remember, initially when everyone attends these Bhakti Viksha classes or Bhagavatam classes, at times, some of them are disinterested, but still the Shiksha Guru states, please listen attentively. Slowly, you will automatically get into the mood of listening to it. That's exactly what is being given here. Verse number 17, consider this battle a gambling match. Oh, my enemy, consider this battle a gambling match in which our lives are at a stake. The arrows are the dice, and the animals acting as carriers are the game board. No one can understand who will be defeated and who will be victorious. It all depends on the providence, right? Here he gives, Dhritarashtra gives certain analogy and asks enthusiastically, once again, to fight, as no one can understand who will be defeated and who will be victorious. It all depends on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Yes, verse number 18. Can anyone please read this text?
Indra praised Dhritarashtra. Sridhar Goswami said, hearing the straightforward instruction words of Dhritarashtra, King Indra praised him and again took the thunderbolt in his hand. Without bewilderment or duplicity, then he smiled and spoke to Dhritarashtra as follows.
Yes, so Indra first thought, how can a demon have such devotion, knowledge, and detachment? He was surprised and had no smile. Then all of a sudden he remembered, or remembering Prahlad Maharaj, Bali Maharaj and others, he thought, bhakti millions of times greater than mine is possible, even in the demons, right? Even in the demons. Thus his amazement disappeared and he became joyful and started smiling, right? That's what it talks about here, where the last line, it says, Tam ahagata vishmaya. So he forgot everything, and that's where amazement, and then he starts smiling. Moving on to the next verse, which talks about you are a perfect devotee. Indra said, "Oh great demon, I see by your discrimination and endurance in devotional service, despite your dangerous position, that you are a perfect devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the super soul and friend of everyone." Right? Here, how in the purport, Srila Prabhupada gives a reference about how anyone and everyone can become a pure devotee of the Lord, right? By the grace of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, anyone can become an exalted devotee. Striyo Vaishyas Tatha Shudras Tepe Yanti Param Gatim. He talks about that. So Indra was surprised to see that Vritrasura, undisturbed, was fixed in devotional service to the Lord. For such a mentality is impossible for a demon. That's what he was saying. Why did Indra consider Vritrasura a great devotee? Because he was a demon and he was wondering, how can a demon have such state of mind? That's what he was wondering. How can he have such a mentality? It is impossible for a demon, right? So, and Prabhupada emphasizes his mission of preaching, his mission here, and he preaches us here, stating an unalloyed devotee is sure to return home back to Godhead. Moving on, you have surmounted Lord Vishnu's Maya. You have surmounted the illusory energy of Lord Vishnu, and because of this liberation, you have given up the demoniac mentality and have attained the position of a exalted devotee. So here he talks about Mahapurusha. This particular verse clearly talks about how one can become a Mahapurusha. By association of a Mahapurusha, anyone can be a Mahapurusha. Srila Prabhupada in the purport, he states that distinction between a demigod and a demon by giving a reference from the Padma Purana, that a demigod is a devotee of Lord Vishnu, whereas a demon is just the opposite. That's what he gives a reference of over here. Vishnu Bhakta Smrito Daiva, whereas Ashuras Tad Vipriya, they are completely opposite. Vritrasura was considered a demon, but actually he was more than qualified as a devotee or a Mahapurusha. And this is only possible if an unalloyed devotee tries to serve the Lord by delivering him in this way. And he also gives the reference of the second canto verse, where anyone and everyone, whoever has taken the shelter of the Lord, can be purified. Even if one is a Kirata, Andhra, Pulinda, or whatever, he can be purified and can be elevated to a Mahapurusha. So how did Vritrasura achieve such a status? By surrendering to the lotus feet of the Lord. Yes, can anyone please read this? The verse number 21.
Hare Krishna. It's a great wonder. O Vritrasura, demons are generally conducted by the mode of passion. Therefore, what a great wonder it is that although you are a demon, you have adopted the mentality of a devotee and have fixed your mind on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vasudeva, who is always situated in pure goodness.
Thank you so much, Mataji. Yes, so Indra was struck with wonder that Vritrasura was such an exalted devotee that how could he fix his mind without deviation upon the lotus feet of the Lord Vasudeva? He was literally clueless as to what is how he could do it. How did he adopt this mentality of a devotee? Because generally demons are always in the mood of passion, right? That's why he was wondering. And as a Prahlad Maharaj, he was initiated by Narada Muni, and therefore it was possible for him. But how did he become? Because he was not aware of his previous birth. Right, this is one beautiful verse as well. Devotees swim in the ocean of nectar. Yashya bhaktir bhagavati haro nishreyashrevare vikridato amritam bodhayo kim shudrai khatako dakai. A person fixed in the devotional service of the Supreme Lord, Hari, Lord of the highest auspiciousness swims in the ocean of the nectar. For him, what is the use of the water in small ditches, right? Here, very beautiful, we can understand what we call Srila Prabhupada's mood, where in the 5th line or the 6th line of the purport, he says he wants to associate with Krishna's atmosphere of Vrindavana's beauty, right? It's so beautiful, this statement. When I was reading the purport, it says he wants to associate with Krishna's atmosphere of Vrindavana's beauty. So a pure devotee is never attracted to any exalted position within this material world, simply wants to associate with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. No matter whatever material happiness is like water in a ditch. For him, it's any material happiness is like a water in a small ditch, whereas a spiritual happiness eternally enjoyed in the spiritual world is like an ocean of nectar for him. That's what is being emphasized in this particular verse. Moving on to the next section of this verse, where Indra swallows, Vritrasura swallows Indra. We can one by one, we can read this because these are just the verses like a story. We can quickly read this, where the fight resumes again after the philosophy.
Hare Krishna.
Go ahead, Prabhuji.
No, Mataji, please go ahead. Thank you.
Verse 23, the fight resumes. Sri Shukadev Goswami said, Vritrasura and King Indra spoke about devotional service even on the battlefield. And then, as a matter of duty, they began fighting. My dear king, both of them were great fighters and were equally powerful.
Section number 24. Vritrasura whirled his iron club. O Maharaj Parikshit, Vritrasura, who was completely able to subdue his enemy, took his iron club, whirled it around, aimed at Indra, and then threw it at him with his left hand.
Verse 25. Indra cut to pieces. With his thunderbolt named Sataparvana, Indra simultaneously cut to pieces Vritrasura's club and his remaining hand. Verse 26. Vritrasura resembled a mountain. Vritrasura, bleeding profusely, his 2 arms cut off at their roots, looked very beautiful, like a flying mountain whose wings have been cut to pieces by Indra.
Thank you so much, Mataji. Thank you so much, everyone. So this is 26 to 29. Vritrasura resembled a mountain. Vritrasura, bleeding profusely, his 2 arms cut off at their roots, looked very beautiful, like a flying mountain who have been cut to pieces by Indra. Vritrasura was very powerful in physical strength and influence. He placed his lower jaw on the ground and his upper jaw in the sky. His mouth became very deep, like the sky itself, and his tongue resembled a large serpent. With his fearful death-like teeth, he seemed to be trying to devour the entire universe. Thus, assuming a gigantic body, the great demon Vritrasura shook even the mountains and began crushing the surface of the earth with his legs, as if he were the Himalayas walking about. He came before Indra and swallowed him and Airavata, his carrier, just as a big python might swallow an elephant. And when the demigods, along with Brahma, other Prajapatis, and other great saintly persons saw that Indra had been swallowed by the demon, they became very morose. Alas, they lamented. They thought that what a calamity, that Indra is dead now. That's what the demigods started lamenting, thinking he's dead. However, the verse 31, protected by Narayana Kavacha. Can anyone please read these 3?
Hare Krishna. Verse 31, the protective armor of Narayana, which Indra possessed, was identical with Narayana himself, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Protected by that armor and by his own mystic power, King Indra, although swallowed by Vritrasura, did not die within the demon's belly. Verse 32, Indra came out of Vritrasura's abdomen. With his thunderbolt, King Indra, who was also extremely powerful, pierced through Vritrasura's abdomen and came out. Indra, the killer of the demon Bala, then immediately cut off Vritrasura's head, which was as high as the peak of the mountain. Verse 33. Indra took 1 year to cut off Vritrasura's head. Although the thunderbolt revolved around Vritrasura's neck with great speed, separating his head from his body took 1 complete year, 360 days, the time in which the sun, moon, and other luminaries complete a northern and southern journey. Then, at the suitable time for Vritrasura to be killed, his head fell to the ground.
Yeah, this we are talking about the years, the 360 days, the entire complete 1 year. And verse 33, Indra took 1 year to cut off Vritrasura's head. Yeah, I think we just read that. Verse 34 is the celebration when Vritrasura was killed. The Gandharvas and Siddhas in the heavenly planets, they celebrated the prowess of Indra, the killer of Vritrasura, praising Indra and showering flowers upon him with great pleasure. Right here, we can understand that this was just a formality. Indra is being showered flowers, but in actuality, we can understand the showerings should go to Vritrasura as he is the real hero. And moving on to the last verse, the living spark. O King Parikshit, subduer of enemies, the living spark then came forth from Vritrasura's body and returned home back to Godhead. While all the demigods looked on, he entered the transcendental world to become an associate of Sankarshana. Right? So what has happened here, when Vritrasura swallowed Indra, he thought, now I killed Indra. There is no more need of fighting. Let me go back home to Godhead. So what he did, he stopped all his bodily activities and became situated in trance. He went to the mystic yoga in trance. So there, taking advantage of his silence, Indra pierced his abdomen. He pierced his abdomen and he comes out of the body. He cut it apart and he comes out of the body. So what we understand here, the Acharya states that Vritrasura himself was not killed. Why? Because in his original consciousness, Vritrasura has already returned back home, back to Godhead, and became an associate of Lord Sankarshana. So here, only his body was cut to pieces because that's what it's remained, and the living spark returned back home, back to Godhead. Vritrasura ki jai, Shri Bhagavatam ki jai, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, and Jai Srila Prabhupada. Thank you so much, everyone. Sorry, I think I have extended almost like 15 minutes. If there are any comments, any questions?
Hare Krishna. Thanks a lot, Prabhuji. Samba Prabhuji, such a nice class. It's a very wonderful section actually. We are very fortunate to listen from you on auspicious Ekadashi day of Purushottam. I don't think you get a chance again in next time. It's a very, very fortunate year. And it's a very nice discussion between Indra and Vritrasura. What are the Vritrasura's instructions? Really amazing actually. A lot of things to learn also. Thanks a lot for finishing, with all your effort, finishing in time. And also, I just wondering one point. It just said that, how Parishit Maharaj left, before Tashaka comes and bites, like that. It mentioned that he also left his body before Indra cut his pieces actually. So I'm just wondering, about doing all these things will happen. Then also maybe your Buddha can answer, Mataji can answer this question in our second part. So my question is in advance, I'm asking, then how come the Indra got the sin in? Even though he is a Brahmana killer, but at the same time, Bhagavad Gita says, in that first chapter, 36 sloka, Krishna says, clearly writes, the six type of people can be killed, including aggressor and all these things. Six type of aggressor can be killed. So Vritra was also not exception for this. He is an aggression. He himself started war with Indra. Indra did not go for war with him. And in fact, then how did Indra got the sinful effects? The next chapter it is there. It is linked between first chapter and second chapter. I'm just waiting answer. Maybe end of the section, Mataji can answer this section.
Okay. So this is a question. This is a question to you. Yeah. So we'll hope Mataji will answer. Great. Thank you so much, Prabhuji.
Go with
how did Indra get the sin?
Hare Krishna. Prabhuji, before moving, I just wanted to add a few points related to Karma Mimamsa and Vaishnava philosophy because it is very important for the devotees to know. So even
yes,
though,
Prabhuji, please go ahead.
even though the discussion took place, some clarification is already given, but I would just like to add a few points because coincidentally, it was not planned. Yesterday, I was reading through the pastime of Govardhan Leela, and there also some description is given about Karma Mimamsa philosophy. So, I would just like to add a few points. According to Karma Mimamsa philosophy, the karma is the supreme, even above the Supreme Lord. Okay, it says that the Supreme Lord also cannot do anything with the law of karma. So it prevails and it controls everything. So that is what Karma Mimamsa philosopher says, that you don't have to depend on the Lord, you don't have to worship the Lord. Everything happens by karma. So you just follow karma and you get the results. But Vaishnava says, no, Supreme Lord is the supreme controller. He is even above the karma because karma is a law. Karma is a law and it acts in a general way. So for behind every law, there is a lawmaker. So in that way, one point to understand is that even though karma is acting, but that karma rule is existing because of the Lord. The Lord has made that to exist. One point is that. Second is that that the free will, there is a free will which is independent of the karma, and the free will is given by the Lord. It is created by the Lord. It is the gift of the Lord. So every living entity has the free will to choose what he wants to do. So, so in that way, he can end the results of karma, because what he chooses to do now, the future will change. So in that way, the living entity has the independence to end the karma. In the 5 topics also that the Bhagavad Gita discusses, Ishvara, Prakriti, Kala, Karma, and Jiva. So karma is the one which is said it is temporary and it can be ended. So that is within the hands of the living entities by the sanction of the Lord. The Lord has given the free will. Lord has created the will and gifted the will. So in that way also, this is there. Third point is that even though the law of karma acts in general way, 90% of the time, 95% of the time, but anytime the Lord wants to intervene, he can always do and make the changes, right? Even though generally, usually the Lord doesn't interfere with non-devotees. To the point, coming to the point of what Ravi Lochana Prabhu was saying, generally the Lord does not interfere with the non-devotees. Whatever law is existing, karma, it goes on. Whatever he has done results, it will come and go, and the Lord has designated that to a certain personality, department, nature. So the Maya or the material nature, she takes the charge and she keeps doing. But as far as the devotee is concerned, when the devotee takes the shelter of Guru and follow the regulative principles and the devotional service, the Lord intervenes. He does not give it to the general Maya to conduct. He intervenes in the sense that he takes the charge. So it is not directly the karma acting. He decides what should happen, what should not happen, and how it should happen, how much quantity should happen. Sometimes it may happen that we may think that devotee is undergoing suffering or karmic reactions, but it is by the will of the Lord. Sometimes the devotee may not have committed any sinful activity, but still he may have to undergo severe suffering because of the will of the Lord, because the Lord decides that whatever is best to make the living entity more closer and to make him more love the Lord will decide. So he may give more, in more than what the karmic reaction, he may decide to give more. And at sometimes there may be a lot of karma previously, and the Lord says, Kalivalli, I will neutralize everything. So that also is possible. So that is the will of the Lord. He can always intervene, so he have a higher power on the Lord. So and the third thing is the Karma Mimamsa says, perform the duty. That is the highest thing. Nothing else matters. But Vaishnava says, whether you are able to perform your duty perfectly or not, serve the Lord is the best. If you are serving the Lord the best way, even if you are not able to perform your duty, of course, that does not mean that the devotees neglect their duty. They do their best, but performing the duty 100% successfully is not the success. Keeping the Lord in the center and serving the Lord is the success. So these are the few points I wanted to share. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Thank you so much. Yeah. So partially to answer Murli Prabhu's question, yeah. So this was all the Lord's arrangement, right? The sage's arrangement, how Vritrasura came into picture, and this was all the plan was to kill. Anyways, we'll move on to Mataji's lecture or to the session, unless there are any questions or any other comments. Something in the chat. Okay.
Mamtanji, please go ahead. And
Yes,
keep
thank
it
you so
open.
much, Prabhuji.
Keep
Thank you
it
so
very,
much.
very short. You already had opening prayers. Just to go with the straight away to seconds.
Hare Krishna, Dhanvat Pranams to everybody. We just have about 30 minutes. I'm not sure if I can finish, but I'll try and keep it short. I think we still, it's a very small chapter. It's a very small section, although very important one. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Mudiraye Nashtaprayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatyuttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtuki Krishnaya Vasudevaya Devaki Nandanaya Cha Nanda Gopakumaraya Govindaya Namo Namaha. Hare Krishna. Thank you all for giving me this opportunity to present this topic today, especially on Mahadvadashi, and also the topic itself is about sin and sinful reactions. So here in this chapter, we see how King Indra is afflicted by sinful reactions. And are you all able to see the screen? Yes, yes.
Yes, Mataji, clear it is.
Please, can one of you read the chapter summary? Hare Krishna. This chapter describes Indra's fear at having killed a Brahmana, Vritrasura, and it also describes how he fled and was saved by the grace of Lord Vishnu. When all the demigods requested Indra to kill Vritrasura, he refused because Vritrasura was
Just
a
a
Brahmana.
minute, I'm just connected to the headset. Sorry about that. Yes, sorry about that. Please go ahead and read.
Hare Krishna, chapter summary. This chapter describes Indra's fear at having killed a Brahmana, Vritrasura, and it also describes how he fled and was saved by the grace of Lord Vishnu. When all the demigods requested Indra to kill Vritrasura, he refused because Vritrasura was a Brahmana. The demigods, however, encouraged Indra not to fear killing him because Indra was protected by the Narayan Kavach, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself, Lord Narayan. Even by a glimpse of the chanting of Narayan's name, one becomes free from all the sinful reactions of killing a woman, a cow, or a Brahman. The demigods advised Indra to perform an Ashwamedha sacrifice by which Narayan would be pleased. For the performer of such a sacrifice is not implicated in sinful reactions, even if he kills the entire universe.
Very well. Thank you, Mataji. It's continued. Please, can one of you read?
Following these instructions from the demigods, King Indra fought Vritrasura. But when Vritrasura was killed, everyone was satisfied. But King Indra, who knew Vritrasura's position, this is nature of great personality. Even if a great personality acquires some opulence, he is always ashamed and regretful if he acquires it illegally. Indra could understand that he was certainly entangled by sinful reactions for killing a Brahmana. Indeed, he could see sinful reaction personified following him, and thus he fled here and there in fear, thinking of how to rid himself of his sins. He went to Manas Sarovara, and there, under the protection of goddess of fortune, he meditated for 1,000 years.
Vipul, thank you very much. So, yeah, last part of it. Please, can one of you read?
During this time, can I read, Mataji?
Yes, please continue, Prabhuji.
Yeah. During this time, Nausa reigned over the heavenly planets as the perspective of Indra. Unfortunately, however, he was attracted by the beauty of Indra's wife, Sachi Devi, and because of his sinful desire, he had to accept the body of a serpent in his next life. Indra later performed a great sacrifice with the help of exalted Brahmana and saints. In this way, he was released from the reactions of his sinful killing of a Brahmana.
Thank you very much, Prabhuji. So just a small introduction of what we just learned, what Prabhuji covered as a small short one. So finally, like as per the desire of the Supreme Lord, sages, as per the desire of the Supreme Lord, the sages and the Brahmanas, and including Vritrasura, the plan was made to kill Vritrasura, where he wanted to be relieved from the demoniac body. Although like a devotee, he is in the body of a demon. This is because the devotee is in the demon's body, this is creating a huge disturbance amongst the demigods and the sages. So what happens in the previous chapter, a little bit of what we just learned is that Vritrasura was swallowed by Indra, and having swallowed, he assumes that Indra has killed him. But being a pure devotee of Krishna, he just goes into absorption, and then he goes into samadhi, where the soul leaves the demoniac body. So after this moment, Indra thinks that now it's time for him to kill the demon, and not having known that the soul has already left, everyone witnessed that the body had left to Vaikuntha Lokas, and it reached the lotus feet of Lord Shankarachana. So after that, Indra had to struggle to kill and cut the neck for almost 30 days. So, but the body has become very stiff, and hence it required a special weapon. Even though he had a special weapon, it took time for him to kill.
360 days.
360 days. Thank you. So let's see the first verse. Please, can one of you read?
Text number 1. Sri Shukadeva Goswami said, O King Parikshit, who was so charitably disposed, when Vritrasura was killed, all the presiding deities and everyone else in the three planetary system was immediately pleased and free from trouble. Everyone, that is, except Indra. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna. So in this verse, we see that here Indra was very clear that he killed a demon. And so he was, although he's a demon, a Brahmana is in the demon's body. So as per the Lord's plan, Vritrasura wished, and as per the Lord's plan and Vritrasura's wish itself, he will be getting out of this demoniac body. Here, although Indra did not do the right thing, he's questioning himself and his consciousness. So being a Vaishnava, it's very important that we are contemplating and introspecting our actions at all times. Is the learning that we get. So in this section, we're seeing how Indra is unhappy in the first 5 verses. Please, can one of you read the second verse?
Verse 2, Hare Krishna. Thereafter, the demigods, the great saintly persons, the inhabitants of Pitraloka and Bhutaloka, the demons, the followers of the demigods, and also Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, and the demigods, subordinate to Indra, all returned to their respective homes while departing. However, no one spoke to Indra.
Please continue, Prabhuji.
Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur comments, Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, and other demigods returned to their respective abodes, but Indra did not, for he was disturbed at having killed Vritrasura, who was actually a Brahmana. After killing Vritrasura, Indra went to the Manasarovara lake to become free from sinful reaction. When he left the lake, he performed an Ashwamedha Yagin and then returned to his own abode.
Hare Krishna, thank you, Prabhuji. So everyone left to their own abode, but however, they were not happy. So this is like a very important thing that none of them were happy. This just like how in Kurukshetra war also, I was hearing to one of the lectures where we had I'm forgetting the name of the, I think it's, His Grace Gaurasundar Prabhuji. In the lecture of Gaurasundar Prabhuji, we hear that he says that everyone left to their own abode. However, this was just like a silence, or how Yudhishthira Maharaj was repenting. He feels that just like how even though he wanted a kingdom, it's just that the massacre which comes through in front of him, he feels that how for one person's wish of being fulfilling his own desire of being a king, and else is turned into such a massacre. So initially he denied that here in Lord, that is Indra's case also, he denied that he does not want this service. But sages convinced him that they can perform Ashwamedha Yagya and also get rid of the sinful reactions. So all this discussion had already happened, and we see that Indra was pursued to take up this particular task. Yes, please, can one of you read?
Verse 3, Maharaja Parishit inquired from Sukadeva Goswami, O great sage, what is the reason Indra unhappiness? I wish to hear about this. He killed Vritrasura. All the demigods are extremely happy. Why the Indra himself unhappy?
Continue, Prabhuji.
Indra was unhappy because he knew that he killed a great devotee and Brahmana. Vritrasura outwardly appeared to be a demon, but inwardly he was a great devotee, therefore great Brahmana.
Please, can one of you continue?
The
Third verse continues. Hare Krishna. A Vaishnava is already a Brahmana, although a Brahmana may not be a Vaishnava. The Padma Purana says, Shatkarma Nipuno Vipro Mantra Tantra Visharadaha Avaishnavo Guru Nasya Vaishnava Shvapacho Guruhu. One may be a Brahmana in terms of his culture and family, and may be expert in Vedic knowledge, Mantra Tantra Visharadaha. But if he is not a Vaishnava, he cannot be a Guru. This means that an expert Brahmana may not be a Vaishnava, but a Vaishnava is already a Brahmana. A millionaire may very easily possess hundreds and thousands of dollars, but a person with hundreds and thousands of dollars is not necessarily a millionaire. Vritrasura was a perfect Vaishnava, and therefore he was also a Brahmana. Yes, thank you, Mataji. So here, this is one of the analogies that Srila Prabhupada is mentioning, that a millionaire may very easily possess hundreds and thousands of dollars, but a person with hundreds and thousands of dollars is not necessarily a millionaire. So Vritrasura was a perfect Vaishnava, and therefore he is also a Brahmana. And also Srila Prabhupada states in his purport that herein it is clearly stated that the demoniac people like such as Prahlad Maharaj and Bali Maharaj were outwardly they were being a demon, but just by birth they were demon. Therefore, in terms of a real culture, one should not be considering whether one is a demigod or a demon. By birth, one is not considered that way, but rather one has to be showing or reflecting that in one's dealings. Like in this case, Vritrasura proved himself a great devotee of the Supreme Personality. And hence he was transferred to the Vaikuntha Loka, into the lotus feet of Lord Shankarshana itself. So in this way, but after doing this service, he is feeling guilty as well. That is, Lord Indra is also feeling guilty that he committed this particular sin. So this kind of a pain in the heart that he is killed, a Brahmana is actually who is very dear to the Lord is something that only a Vaishnava can do.
Hare Krishna, sorry Mataji, that $1 million I did not understand. Mataji. Can you explain what is it?
Yeah. Yes, Prabhuji. So here a millionaire may very easily possess hundreds and thousands of dollars, but a person with hundreds and thousands of dollars is not necessarily a millionaire. So one may be a millionaire, right? One may have lots of money, but then he may not be a millionaire by heart, right? He may not be very, he may not be very, he may not feel rich. One may not feel rich by heart, but just by having or possessing money, one may not be rich. So in the same way, a devotee, even if we are practicing and if we are not feeling, if we are just practicing mundane, and then if we are not practicing consciously, then it will not have that kind of an effect. Or if you're not feeling guilty, and if you're not introspecting of your actions, then it will not have, then I think it's not something that's correct. Please correct me if I'm wrong, if anybody would like to add.
And also a son just becoming a millionaire. A person is a millionaire by earning the Tatas or the Birlas or whatever it is, but by default, a son doesn't become. So that's what it's mentioned. But a person with hundreds and thousands of dollars, it's not necessarily a millionaire.
Hare Krishna. Prabhuji, I think what is mentioned here specifically in this analogy is the hierarchy. If a person is having 1,000 rupees, he automatically have 100 rupees. But if a person is having 100 rupees, he does not have 1,000 rupees. So here millionaire is compared a higher position. If a person is millionaire, he automatically have thousands of dollars. But a person who is having $1,000 may not be necessarily a millionaire. So Prabhupada wants to say that similarly, there are different gradation in living entities. Somebody is a sinful person, somebody is a neutral person, then somebody is pious, then somebody becomes a Brahmana. In that Brahmana also, there are various categories. Somebody who knows the Vedic ritual, some who understand the Vedic ritual, somebody who's a devotee. So it says a devotee is the highest. When one devotee, everything else is covered. So a Brahmana is not necessarily a devotee, but a devotee is already a Brahmana. This is what it is.
Yes. So I think I remember now, it's like a Vaishnava is already a Brahmana is what was coming up in this.
So that is why a millionaire is already having $1,000, but a $1,000 person may not be necessarily a millionaire.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Prabhuji.
Thank you.
Yes, please can one of you read?
Sukadeva Goswami answered, when all the great sages and demigods were disturbed by the extraordinary power of Vritrasura, they had assembled to ask Indra to kill him. Indra, however, being afraid of killing a Brahmana, declined their request.
Thank you. So here we see that, or rather in the previous chapter also, we just had a discussion about karma mimamsa as well. So karma is actually very, very complex. One may be rendering good service in their previous karma and reaping good benefits. But however, let's say one is committing sins in this particular life, super soul, and there are many witnesses that are actually watching us, and hence our karma is very complex to understand. Otherwise also, it's like one should always be watching their or introspecting their actions. Please can one of you read verse 5?
Krishna, King Indra replied, when I killed Vishwarupa, I received extensive sinful reactions. But I was favored by the women, land, trees, and water, and therefore I was able to divide the sin among them. But now, if I kill Vritrasura, another Brahmana, how shall I free myself from the sinful reactions?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Prabhuji. So we here see that again, if we think that we are just committing a sin and no one is watching us, it's actually a mistake. But rather, also that if we have a tendency to perform a sin, that is actually one has a tendency, which is again we read in Nectar Devotion that it's kutam. If we have that kutam, this will definitely fructify one day. So if we are committing an error, it will one day or the other we will make an error again and again and again. So if you have not received any sinful reactions, it will definitely fructify someday. And hence, the root cause of all this is because it's due to avidya. Yes, please can one of you read?
Hare Krishna. Sri Shukadeva Goswami said, Hearing this, the great sages replied to King Indra, O King of heaven, all good fortune unto you. Do not fear. We shall perform an Ashwamedha sacrifice to release you from any sin you may accrue by killing the Brahmana. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Mataji. So now the sages are also convincing that, the principle here is that if he could think that he was actually given this service by the sages, and anyway they are taking care of all the reactions, but still Indra is actually worried. But here we are seeing that in the heart of a devotee who thinks that it's a risky service, right? It's a risky service, and apparently it's a wrong to kill a Brahmana who's dear to the Lord. So even if the Lord comes in front of him, even if the Lord comes in front of us and then tells us to do a service, if we do not have the attitude to please the Lord, then it is something that a devotee would always check if this is going to please the Lord or not. Please, can one of you read that verse 7?
The rishis continued.
Yeah, please read, bro.
No, Prabhuji, you go ahead. It's going to echo actually.
The rishis continued, O King Indra, by performing an Ashwamedha sacrifice and thereby pleasing the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the Supreme Lord, Narayan, the Supreme Controller, one can be relieved even of the sinful reactions for killing the entire world, not to speak of killing a demon like Vritrasura.
Very well, thank you. So although the service was under the supervision of the Lord, but it is not intended, if it is not intended to please the Lord, then the Lord, it will actually create sinful reactions. So Vaishnava never feels that he has done the service properly, that he has done the service properly under the supervision and also for the satisfaction of the Lord. That's why the heart of the Vaishnava is like they never judge the activity or rather the results, rather going deeper into the heart, especially with the service, which is risky, is going to be like he will be thinking twice about it. One should think twice about it if it's going to be risky, especially if it's not pleasing the Lord. Yes, please, can one of you read?
Hare Krishna. One who has killed a Brahmana, one who has killed a cow, or one who has killed his father, mother, or spiritual master can be immediately freed from all sinful reactions simply by chanting the holy name of Lord Narayana. Other sinful persons such as dog-eaters and chandalas who are less than Shudras can also be freed in this way. But you are a devotee, and we shall help you by performing the great horse sacrifice. If you please Lord Narayana in that way, why should you be afraid? You will be freed even if you kill the entire universe, including the Brahmanas, not to speak of killing or a disturbing demon like Vritrasura. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Mataji, please continue.
Yes, Mataji. These verses name the performers of various sinful deeds. In the Manu Samhita, the following names are given. A son begotten by a Brahmana and born from the womb of a Shudra mother is called a Parashava or Nishada, a hunter accustomed to stealing. Okay, he is called a Parashava or Nishada, a hunter accustomed to stealing. A son begotten by a Nishada in the womb of a Shudra mother is called a Pukasa. A child begotten by Kshatriya in the womb of a daughter of a Shudra is called a Ugra. A child begotten by a Shudra in the womb of a daughter of a Kshatriya is called a Shata. A child begotten by a Kshatriya in the womb of a lower class woman is called a Swadha or dog eater. All such offsprings are considered extremely sinful, but the holy name of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is so strong that all of them can be purified simply by chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Mataji. Yes, please, can one of you read? It's glories of the chanting. One of the very important verses.
Hare Krishna. Verse 8 and 9. Prema Vivarta by Jagadananda Pandit. It is said, Eka Krishna Name Papi Riyata Papakshaya Bahujanme Se Papi Sarupe Naraya. This means that by once chanting the holy name of the Lord, he can even imagine performing. The holy name is so spiritually potent that simply by chanting the holy name, one can be free from the reactions to all those chanting the deity regularly. For such purified devotees, freedom from sinful reaction is certainly assured. This does not mean, however, that one should intentionally commit sin because he is chanting the holy name. Such a mentality is a most abominable of the holy name. Nam no balad yasya papa buddhi, sinful activities. But if one repeatedly and intentionally commits sins while chanting the holy name, he is most condemned.
Yes, thank you very much, Mataji. So here we see that one should not intentionally commit any sinful acts just based on that he's thinking that he himself is freed from reactions because he's chanting the holy name. Such a mentality is actually very abominable, and it's abominable at the lotus feet of the holy name itself. So one should not chant thinking that I can go ahead and commit sins just because I'm chanting, and that's actually inappropriate. Yes, please can one of you read? This is also glories of the holy name.
Kirita Pulinda Pulkasham Abira Sumba Yavana Kasadaya Na Anne Chayad Apashayashaya Shuddhanti Tasmei Prabha.
You're muted, Prabhuji.
You can read. Yeah, Kiratas, Unas, Pulindas, Pulkashas, Abiras, Shumbas, Yavanas, members of Kasa race, even after addicted to sinful acts, can be purified by taking shelter of the devotees of the Lord, for he is the supreme power. I beg offer my respectful obeisances unto him. Even such a sinful person can be certainly all be purified if they chant the holy name of the Lord under the direction of a pure devotee.
Yes, thank you very much, Prabhuji. So here is saying that the sages encouraged King Indra to kill Vritrasura even at the risk of Brahmahatya, the killing of a Brahmana, and they guarantee to release him from sinful reactions by performing Ashwamedha Yajna. Such purposefully devised atonement, however, cannot relieve the performer from sinful reactions. And here we also see that how even such sinful persons can certainly be purified if they chant the holy name of the Lord, but one should not chant one should not just chant thinking that with an absent mind that we will be able to relieve ourselves. Yes. Now in this section, we'll see how the demigods reassure Lord Indra. Please, can one of you read?
Sri Sukadeva Goswami said, encouraged by the words of the sages, Indra killed Vritrasura. And when he was killed, the sinful reaction for killing a Brahmana, Brahmahatya, certainly took shelter of Indra. After killing Vritrasura, Indra could not surpass the Brahmahatya, the sinful reactions of killing a Brahmana. Formerly, he had killed one Brahmana, Vishwarupa, and out of circumstantial anger, but this time, following the advice of the sages, he killed another Brahmana purposely. Therefore, the sinful reaction was greater than before. Indra could not be relieved from the reaction simply by performing sacrifices for atonement. He had to undergo a severe series of sinful reactions, and when he was freed by such suffering, the Brahmanas allowed him to perform the horse sacrifice.
Thank you very much, Prabhuji. Yes, so sin in this verse, we see that how the demigods are reassuring and also encouraging the Indra. Yes. Yes, please go ahead. Please, can one of you read the 11th verse?
Following the advice of the demigods, Indra killed Vritrasura, and he suffered because of this sinful killing. Although the other demigods were happy, he could not derive happiness from the killing of Vritrasura. Indra's other good qualities, such as tolerance, opulence, could not help him in his grief.
Yes, please continue, Prabhuji.
Srila Prabhupada purport. one cannot be happy by committing sinful acts, even if one is endowed with material opulence. Indra found this to be true. People began to blaspheme him, saying, "This person has killed a Brahmana for the sake of enjoying heavenly material happiness."
Yes, thank you very much, Prabhuji. So Srila Prabhupada says that therefore, in spite of being king of heaven and enjoying material opulence, Indra was always unhappy because of the accusations of the populace. So Indra was feeling very unhappy and he is suffering over here, where when one commits a shameful act and he becomes infamous and hence he cannot be happy, or despite having good qualities, he may feel guilty. Yes, please, can one of you read the next verse?
Indra saw personified sinful reaction chasing him, appearing like a Chandala woman, a woman of the lowest class. She seemed very old, and all the limbs of her body trembled. Because she was afflicted with tuberculosis, her body and garments were covered with blood, breathing an unbearable fishy odor that polluted the entire street. She called to Indra, "Wait, wait."
Yes, thank you. So in this verse, Srila Prabhupada says that when a person is afflicted with tuberculosis, he vomits blood, which makes his garments bloody. Yes, please, can one of you read the verse 14?
Hare Krishna. O king, Indra first fled to the sky, but there also he saw the woman of personified sin chasing him. This which followed him wherever he went. At last he very quickly went to the northeast and entered the Manasarovara lake.
Thank you, Mataji. Yes, so at last, finally, he took shelter of Manasa Sarovara lake. And also continuing that, always thinking of how he could be relieved from sinful reactions of a killing of a Brahmana, King Indra, invisible to everyone, lived in the lake for 1,000 years in the subtle fibers of the stem of a lotus. The fire god used to bring him his share of yajnas, but because the fire god was afraid to enter the water, Indra was practically starving. But it is also that, even though it is not difficult for him to enter, Agni Deva was rather Agni Deva could enter the waters, because even he had to share or deliver the share to Lord Varuna. But still, Varuna lives in the water itself. However, this water was difficult to enter because Shiva's followers were guarding it, and hence the sin of killing a Brahmana could not, because he had killed a Brahmana, he could not enter to reach out to Lord Indra. Yes, please, can one of you read?
Hare Krishna,
Yes.
Mati, sorry for disturbing.
Yes,
Mati,
yes.
in that summary of the whole chapter in the beginning, we read it. And it said when the Indra entered the Manasarovar, then under the protection of the goddess of fortune, the word goddess of fortune will come into picture. Actually, Manasarovar belongs to the Shiva and Parvati. Can you just clarify those confusion?
The lotus, in the lotus of the Manasa Sarovara lake, it's mentioned that Lakshmi Devi resides. That's what I read while I was hearing the lectures, one of the lectures.
Under the protection of goddess of fortune. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, I understood.
Yes, Prabhuji. Thank you. Yes, please, can I have to read the 16th verse?
As long as King Indra lived in the water, wrapped in the stem of the lotus, Nahusha was equipped with the ability to rule the heavenly kingdom. Due to his knowledge, austerity, and mystic power, Nahusha, however, blinded and maddened by power and opulence, made undesirable proposals to Indra's wife with a desire to enjoy her. Thus, Nahusha was cursed by a Brahmana and later became a snake.
Thank you. So next we see that Indra's sins were diminished by the influence of Rudra, the demigods of all directions. Because Indra was protected by the goddess of fortune, Lord Vishnu's wife, who resides in the lotus clusters of Manasa Sarovara lake, Indra's sins could not affect him. Indra was ultimately relieved of all reactions of his sinful deeds by strictly worshipping Lord Vishnu. Then he was called back to the heavenly planets by the Brahmanas and reinstated in his position. I think, Prabhuji, your question is answered that no, we had it was protected by Goddess of Fortune.
Thank you. Thank you.
And next verse, the Rishis continued, King Indra, by performing an Ashwamedha sacrifice and thereby pleasing the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is in the form of a super soul, Lord Narayana, the Supreme Controller, one can be relieved even of the sinful reactions of killing the entire world, not to speak of the king, not to speak of the killing of a demon like Vritrasura. So in the next verse, we have the last section where
The horse
Indra
sacrifice.
returns to the heavenly planets. The horse sacrifice performed by saintly Brahmanas relieved Indra of the reactions of all his sins because he worshipped the Supreme Personality of Godhead in that sacrifice. O King, although he had committed a gravely sinful act, it was nullified at once by that sacrifice, just as fog is vanquished by brilliant sunrise. And yes, so by pleasing the Lord, one is actually pleasing everything, and hence the what do we get by listening to this chapter again and again is that the horse sacrifice performed by sorry, it's about Indra returning to the heavenly planets. So here we see that the horse sacrifice performed by the saintly Brahmanas relieved Indra of the reactions to all his sins because he worshipped the Supreme Personality of Godhead in that sacrifice. O King, he had committed a gravely sinful act, it would be nullified at once. Okay, sorry, I think this is the wrong translation.
No,
Sorry
that's
about
the one. O King, although he had committed a
This is the
gravely
previous
sinful
one.
act.
So that was already read. So Indra, in this verse, we see that it's a Falashruti where Indra returns to the heavenly planets, where King Indra was favored by Marichi and other great sages. They performed the sacrifice just according to the rules and regulations, worshipping the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Super Soul, the original person. Thus, Indra regained his exalted position. Sorry.
And was again honored by everyone.
So honored by everyone. So, what is the Falashruti? Falashruti is that in this very great narrative, there is a glorification of Supreme Personality of God and Narayana. There are statements about the exaltedness of devotional service. There are descriptions of devotees like Indra and Vritrasura. There are statements about King Indra's release from sinful life and about his victory in fighting the demons. By understanding this incident, one is relieved of all sinful reactions. Therefore, the learned are always advised to read this narration. If one does so, one will become expert in the activities of the senses. His opulence will increase and his reputation will become widespread. One will also be relieved of all sinful reactions. He will conquer all his enemies, and duration of his life will increase. Because this narration is auspicious in all respects, learned scholars regularly hear and repeat it on every festival day. Also, one of the very important things is that whenever one is performing any service, attitude towards that particular service or the results is more important. Sometimes we cannot judge the results, and sometimes we cannot judge the service, but rather we should be having the right attitude, and therefore we should approach realized souls so that we get realized souls for synthetic souls. Rather, we want to evaluate, and we should be having the right attitude towards any kind of service that's given to us, and it should be pleasing Krishna, and everything is resolved in Krishna consciousness. We have 2 CBA questions. Why was Indra unhappy?
Just the questions.
Yes.
Yeah. Why was Indra unhappy? He was unhappy because he killed, we already read that. He was killing Vritrasura. First, initially, he killed a Brahmana, and again, he's killing Vritrasura, who's a Brahmana.
Anyone else would like to add?
Well, that's the answer.
Hare Krishna. Yeah, more than that, Indra was very unhappy because he was killing a devotee. Vritrasura gave us such a good philosophy. So he was trying to kill a devotee. That's why he was more happy.
Thank you very much, Prabhuji. Also, the second one, what is the greatest offense one can commit towards a holy name?
That you already said.
We already discussed.
Yes. Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. That
Already
one.
one of the chapters, by strength of the holy name, one should not commit sinful activities.
Yes, thank you very much.
That cannot be a mode of atonement also.
Mataji, my questions remains at the beginning, which I
Yes,
asked.
Prabhuji. Can you repeat, Prabhuji, because I was just switching. I wasn't able to hear. I was on my headset.
You can't hear.
Can you hear me now, Prabhuji?
Yes.
I was not able to hear because at that point of time I was on headset while you were asking question to Prabhuji. Is that the question you mentioning?
Yeah, the question is the Bhagavad Gita Krishna says, like in the first chapter 36 sloka, in that narration, Prabhupada writes there are 6 types of aggressor can be killed. So Vritrasura also comes under one of the other 6 categories of aggressor. He did a lot of things.
Vritrasura was a
Aggressor.
He's an aggressor.
There are 6 kind of aggressors who we can kill, like plunderers, the riches, the Brahmana who kills those he's asking about. He comes under that and he killed them. So why is he still lamenting? Is that your question?
Yes, Prabhuji. Then how did he get the simple reaction like that? That's what my question is.
yes, Prabhuji. I'm just thinking that of what I've heard so far in the lectures that here, even though like how we read in the that is the analogy that if one is a Vaishnava, then in that case if a Vaishnava will always think that whatever I have done is right or wrong, and since he had already offended, that he had already killed his spiritual he had killed his spiritual master previously, that is a Brahmana. He was already accruing sins over there, and also over here in case of Vritrasura, he is his words, which were the lot of teachings, the most chastising teachings that came in the previous chapter that we read, we are seeing that he is teaching like he is their spiritual master, right? So he could see that this individual is not a very is not, even though he's in the body of a demon, he is not actually a demon, rather he is a very exalted personality, and hence one should not be one should be very precarious of their own actions. When they are committing any acts, one should be very precarious of their own actions, and hence it's not the position of how on the other side whether I'm killing or these six aggressors. One should be taking care of one's karma before they think of others' karma. So he himself, that is Indra himself, is lamenting that what is Vritrasura, or however the other side, he's taking care of his own karma. But in case of Brahmana, that is in case of Lord Indra itself, he is contemplating on his own actions, whether my actions are right or wrong. Even though he was requested by all the devotees that, or the sages, that you please do this service, he feels it's a very risky thing for him to come out of this particular act. He's already seeing that it's difficult for him to come out of this particular sin that he is going to commit. So he's contemplating there.
Thank you, Mataji, for a nice section. You're also very fortunate to Purushottam Ekadashi Day got a chance to recite this one. And one thing I really appreciate, I just like to understand from your own life, Prabhuji and Mataji lifestyle, and you have just that point, that attitude of serving, that's very important. And I remember when you visited your place, and how you nicely, that time, we have wondered when you joined this, that Goshala in the Vrindavan, that time it was a very tough time actually. It was hot summer, and plus you had afflicted with the corona. And but still, you both of them, did not backtrack, and continue serving. That time the whole setup was not done, nothing was done, but still you struggled a lot. And now still come out last 3-4 years so successfully. So I'm just correlating, your effort and that how your teaching is going on. Then the attitude of serving is not the victory is ultimate. Ultimate serving is very important. So you are like one of the best example for the whole this Vritrasura understanding actually. And you had a lot of practical realization. And thanks a lot for a wonderful section. I'm really grateful for you. Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji, thank you so much that you said so many things, but we really don't have, or we don't know that if we are really doing such a of whatever you just told. We are able to just think that Krishna is providing everything. It's just that we even though we came from Dubai, I don't see anything less than what we were in Dubai. We're already getting all the things that that we were having in Dubai, we feel. So maybe it's just that Yeah, of course, it's a different environment. It's a different place, but the struggle is everywhere. So we don't feel that much. But thank you so much for your kind words, Prabhuji.
Yeah, it's really, you had so much dependency on Lord Krishna. Actually, in fact, I feel in being Dubai, I'm in very comfort zone actually. That's why that end of that my realization, how much you got actually. So that's why I really appreciate your, great effort. Thanks a lot.
We're also in comfort zone, Prabhuji. We are also very much in comfort zone. Thank you.
Comfort zone of Radha Shyam Singh. Not of mercy of Dubai Sheikh.
Yes, yes, it's more mercy here. Thank you. Thank you. If you have any more questions, please let me know. I just swiftly ran through the chapter because we didn't want to keep the devotees wait for a long time. Over to you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Mamta Mataji and Samba Prabhu for wonderful session. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Mataji.
You can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you, Mamta Mataji and Samba Prabhu for wonderful session. It's a very nice session in the Bhagavatam. And to hear in on such a auspicious day of Ekadashi in the Purushottam month, very, very auspicious amongst all the Vaishnavas. And yeah, it was very beautifully narrated, both of you. Also adding to the question of Murli Prabhu, even though it was advisable that the aggressor should be protested and should be defeated, even though Vritrasura in this case was an aggressor, but also he was a Vaishnava. So that is the point here. Even though he was in the body of a demon and an aggressor, because he was a Vaishnava at heart and through his activities and his attitude towards the whole battle, that's why Indra could feel that even though I am in the body of a devotee and I'm trying to serve the Lord under the instruction of the Lord, still I do not have that attitude which Vritrasura being a demon has. So that is why he was contemplating, as Mamta Mataji nicely said. And that is how it was affecting him, his consciousness. And that is how a Vaishnava should feel, that externally what may be the circumstance, how I am acting or responding to this particular situation. And that is what is displayed here in this pages of Srimad Bhagavatam. So, thank you.
Mataji, and to everybody, again, although I have covered this chapter, I myself feel that, many a times we know that we are committing sinful things. We are aware of it, but still we do it, right? How do we, even though we know we are doing something that is incorrect, we feel bad that we are doing, of course, we feel guilty of it, but still we commit it. I don't know, it happens with me. So, but then what is the ultimate solution? Like, of course, we will be serving, but still we feel that we still commit sins, right? Many a times, like even small things like, not a small thing, rather, it's very important to be truthful. We don't always, I don't know, I cannot always tell the truth. Although I would love to, and we know that many times we lie. I'm just telling a simple example, but rather, we commit so many bigger sins on a daily basis, whether tendency to discuss something not very appropriate about other Vaishnava or these things. It happens for us as a tendency. So also we feel bad about it, but still we do it. So I was just wondering how we can correct that. What exactly is the solution
very
for it?
practical question. Thank you. Yes, Mataji. Others can also add. I will just start and others can continue. There are so many times that we commit so many mistakes, and as we are human beings, we certainly have the 4 defects, and we definitely commit these mistakes and have the tendency to cheat or to lie, as you said. But as we come to devotional service, at least we are recognizing, we are trying to, we are at least able to recognize that, yes, I am having this anartha. So that is the first step, that we are aware of the fact of our condition. And then as we are aware, even in the common, what would say, those counseling seminars, they say that when you know you have a drawback, then you must approach a person who can relieve you from that. So, sorry?
Work towards it. Is what
Yes,
Prabhuji
work
was-
towards it. Correct. So exactly when we are at least aware of the fact that we have anarthas and we try to act upon it, that is where mercy follows. And the Lord is aware what we are desiring and what we are trying. So as we also discussed before, victory or defeat does not depend. It's not in our hands, but how much we try and what is our endeavor in devotional service, that the Lord knows. And yesterday only I was reading one very nice article where it is said that Krishna is favorably disposed towards a person who is very simple at heart, rather than a person who is complicated. Once he shows something outside and he is something else inside.
Simplicity.
So that person does not deserve mercy of the Lord. The Lord will have mercy, but it will be delayed. So that is how we can take it. That at our level, we can try to be as straightforward and clear and transparent in our dealings and intentions as possible. And then the Lord will decide what we have to get. So to follow our instructions of spiritual master and just be in the association, trying to sincerely serve, that is in our hands. Victory or defeat depends on the Lord.
Yes, victory and defeat definitely is in the Lord's hand, but we commit very, 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 very bad things is what sometimes we feel, but still we commit, even after knowing it, right? Of course, we are under the modes and definitely we commit it. And even if we want to correct, sometimes we tend to not intentionally, even if you know that this is going to be wrong, but still we do it. That becomes a very hard thing.
We repent for that and try not to repeat it again.
Yeah, we repent it.
Yes.
See, like how it is mentioned that, one goes through atonement, right? So we repent, and then again you fall back into the same box.
Again, you get up.
Committing.
Every time you
Yes.
fall, you get up and again try to walk.
Yes.
Rajeshwar Prabhu says, do yani kani chapa pani.
Yes. So not that, because I'm chanting, I will not, we don't think that, oh, I'm chanting anyway, so I can go ahead and do this. No, but it's a tendency that been carried that, we've been doing. We do it again. We are going back to the same mistake. You're committing that mistake. You know it that you're committing the mistake and you still tend to do it. So maybe it has to be practiced several times before we get rid of it. Thank you very much, Prabhuji, Rajeshwar Prabhuji. Yes, I will do Tulsi Parikrama. We do.
So just one point I'd like to add in, but it's said Vishnuitama says, Pandavas, Vipra Dharma Achyutashraya like that. So you're under all these protections, Vipra, Dharma and Achyutashraya. So that's why, you just be in the protection, that's all. That itself is enough. Take care of yourself. And the tendency not go overnight. Actually, you need to, as long as it's in the protection of these three, you're very safe. Actually, you're just. But most important, you realize you are doing. That's it. That realization now comes, then no chance of improving at all. So that's why you need not worry at all. Just continue your represent Achyutashraya. That is itself is. That's what my understanding.
Thank you so much for all your
Thank you so
blessings.
much. Thanks a lot, Prabhuji. Thank you so much, Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Lord. Jai.